Hi, Tim Tatro here from chainsawmilling.net. Today I want to share with you a couple projects I'm doing. They're experimental chainsaw projects. This first one is a chainsaw that I put together that was pretty damaged. It was from damaged parts. The bearing, the clutch side bearing, it would fit into the crankcase, and it would just by hand it would just slide through. This one you can see you'd have to heat the case in order for that to go in. And also the crankshaft, the bearing was spun on the shaft, so it would slide right on the clutch side of the shaft. It would slide right in there and in and out by hand. So with those two problems, I couldn't really use it for a good saw, So what I did was I used this Loctite 620. It's for slip fit type things. It's supposedly a permanent fix, semi-permanent, I guess. I just put it on the bearing and slid them in there, and put the crankshaft in there, and I assembled the case. There's a certain way I did it so it wouldn't get the Loctite inside the crankcase. Also, I had these. One of these is a 056 Stihl 056 chainsaw bearing for the clutch side. That'd be this one. This is an 045 clutch side bearing, and they're the same size. They're the same size, a little bit different on the thickness. The main difference is where the snap ring is. This is for an 045. This is an 045 crankcase half, and that slides in there, and that stop ring will go there. The 056, it has a stop ring inside the crankcase half, but I actually used one of these, and this is an 045, has a 045 crankcase, and I figured since it was just an experiment, and I made it work. Main thing you have to do is make sure it's positioned where the crankshaft isn't going to rub on the crankcase, and I put it together a certain way so that would work. And that was the main problem with this, where it's experimental and I want to see how long it lasts. The other thing was the cylinder has, I can't really show you, I'll show pictures, but it has some wear on the intake side from people using the screen mesh filters for these older saws, because they're hard to find good OEM flocked air filters. And there's a spot on the transfer port bridge where you could tell the piston, the circlip for to hold the piston pin in must have come out, and got jammed in there, and it tore it up a little bit. But other than the wear, it was in the same spot as this one, underneath the intake port. It was just worn through the cylinder a little bit, but it was not in bad shape otherwise. And then I used a piston that was all scored up, but I checked the specifications and it was still good otherwise. I used rings that were a little worn, but they were still good. But you can see it's, I've been using it, and it hasn't shown any signs of breaking down. It starts up, stalls once in a while. That's just because the carburetor is a little old and tired. But that's the first experiment. I'll show you the next one. Okay, here's my second experiment, and it's got three things that I'm trying to fix. Got the cylinder. This cylinder is really scored up bad. I tried running it before, and I couldn't get it to start. It would fire and almost want to start, but it just wouldn't go. The compression was maybe 110, and I just couldn't get it to stay going. But I'm going to try again. This crankcase I bought off eBay maybe a year ago or so, and it had a piston on it that was broken. It was just sold as a parts crankcase or whatever, and I bought it and split the case, and inside where the piston broke, it smashed the inside of the crankcase, which the seller didn't know that, and I told him, and he refunded my money. But it still had I think the crankshaft was good. This, I don't even know if this is the same one. I put different crankshaft and bearings in. But I split the case and it was cracked, and unfortunately I deleted the pictures I took to show the seller. But I've had it for a year, just sitting it was sitting in a scrap pile, and I decided to pull it out for experimental purposes. But I'll show what pictures I do have of it and the fix I did. But I put used bearings, good used crankshaft, new oil seals, and without the oil seals in, it turned over really nicely. Now it's a little, there's a little friction from the seals, but it seems like that's real good. The bar oil side had a hole in it right there, but it was alright. Whoever owned it before patched it up, and I just put JB Weld on the bottom of this metal sheeting and glued it on the bottom just for extra, safety there in case I set it down, it doesn't crack the JB Weld. Then I've got this gas tank that I bought. It goes together like that. I split that because it had a hole. This side was good. This side, nothing wrong with it. But it had a patch, a JB Weld patch, and somebody had just patched it without splitting the case. And what I did, I split the case, and you can see that's a goop of JB Weld. That's exactly how I fixed the crankcase. It had a crack. You could see there was probably like a 1/16 of an inch crack, about maybe a ½ inch long, where it smashed just the one side of the case. And I just gooped it on like that, top and bottom. And what I did, I took a flat file and just filed it even. That's how I fixed that one, and that's what I'm going to do with this one. I haven't finished this one yet. And this one I cut my own gasket. I usually cut my own gaskets, and I just put some Yamabond 4 on it, which is a paste, and it turns rubbery. I just did that. Pressed it on the gasket material, let it dry for a day, or actually a few hours. And then I just took a new razor, like a utility knife razor blade, and cut it out. There's a gasket. Cut out the holes and make sure the 4mm screw will go in all the holes. And then when I go to put it back, so I'll be ready. Another thing I did here, I modified the fuel line little fitting there. I just took the old one out. It was just kind of press fit in, and I threaded it and put this barbed nipple on, and put regular fuel line. This is ethanol tolerant, supposedly Tygon fuel line. And now I can just use, I don't have to buy a OEM Stihl fuel filter, which costs, like costs $7. I can buy the cheaper Husqvarna ones that I think work just as well, or I can buy whatever cheap filter I want and put it on there. But I'm really careful about buying like really cheap aftermarket filters, because that's actually what destroyed this, because I bought some cheap aftermarket filters, and then what happened was particles got through the filter and into the carburetor, and then there's a little fine mesh screen in the carburetor, and it plugged that up completely, and I didn't realize that was happening. And I put this on. I paid $90 for this cylinder and $90 for the piston. They're really good condition. And I was milling. I was like, this doesn't have much power. I don't know. I'm messing with the carburetor and everything. Fried the ignition. It was a good SEM you know, electronic ignition. And then when I finally took the carburetor apart, that little mesh screen was like, there's a little hole that it sunk down into, and that hole was completely packed with fine particles. I think it actually came from the filter. I don't think that sawdust got through it. I think it was just from the filter itself. And so that happened. Then I had to go and check all my other carburetors on all my other saws, and they all had a little bit in that screen also from those aftermarket filters. But I know better now, and so I just use ones that have reputable name. You know, like now I'm using, yeah, these. I believe these are OEM. The guy said they were OEM Husqvarna fuel filters. Those are probably good. And then there's this kind. These are, valves like these are pretty big. But this cylinder, after I fried this cylinder, I went and, this is when I very first started rebuilding chainsaws, and someone said, well, it might just be transfer, you know, and you can use acid to take it off. So I went and bought this whole gallon, which they didn't sell it where I went. They didn't sell smaller. I didn't even want that much. I just wanted a little bit. It wasn't expensive, but you know, I bought that, so I had this gallon of, you know, corrosive stuff sitting on my bench that I should just get rid of. But I put that all in there, and it wasn't transfer. It was just scored. And what happened was it further deepened the scoring and made it so, like, it probably would have still ran before, but after I did that, it was toast. But what I'm doing is, this is the, other than seeing if the JB weld holds on the crankcase, I think it'll be okay on the gas tank. But I'm going to use this castor oil instead of 2-cycle, because I've read that it's a great for 2-cycle as far as heat. Like, it lubricates really well, but it builds up like a film and carbon and stuff like that. And so I'm kind of hoping it does that, and I'm hoping that it if I can actually get this thing to start, I'm hoping that it fills in all them holes and score marks that I did to it. That's just a theory. I don't know. I might not be able to start, and it might not even work like that. I don't know. But I bought a new piston for it, because the old one, let's see if I can find the old one. This old one, I would use this. I mean, it's in rough shape. This one didn't actually go to that one, but something came apart in the cylinder, and it has all these little marks on it. It's scored up real bad. Looks like something got caught between the cylinder and that. Which, all that I don't care about for an experimental saw. What I care about, though, when I rebuild any saw, is the main thing I go by is the gap between this piston skirt and the cylinder. There's probably other things to check. Like, I also check the amount of, a lot of people call it squish, where the piston goes up in there, and I just put a piece of solder down through the spark plug hole and turn it over, and then use calipers to measure it. That's just if it's too thick or not, you know, not enough squish, then I do things to make it tighter. If it's too much, then, you know, I'll just put a thicker cylinder gasket in. But let's see. I had some feeler gauge around here somewhere. My messy place here. But here I've got a variety here. This one I can take a this one's 6/1000 of an inch, and people say that the most you want to go is 5/1000ths of an inch, and I don't even, if it's 4/1000s I use them, but it's this one I'm able to put a 6 easily through there. That's the only reason I'm not using this. Well, actually, not the only reason. The one of these is kind of worn out, where the circlip goes, and you don't want them falling out. But that piston, even though it's just a junk rebuild, I'm not using that junk piston because it'll just blow up my cylinder. And this one, I get these from a seller on eBay, and this is about 20 bucks. And if I check this one, when I buy aftermarket pistons or any piston, I always check them anyway. Check the ring end gap. I know that this won't fit in there. I couldn't even fit a 3 in there. It'll fit a 2/2000ths of an inch through there, because I don't have a 2/1000ths on this, but I couldn't even start a 3/1000ths of an inch in there. So that's really good specifications as far as that goes. There's probably other things people check, I don't know what they are, but that's what I go by. Just that and the squish, and then make sure the ring end gap is where it should be. And that should, if the cylinder was good, it should give good compression and not have too much piston slap and break. And that's probably what happened to this, either that or a bearing broke, like maybe the wrist pin bearing wore out, and then it smashed the crankcase. But that's that. So I'm about to start putting this together, and so I'm going to start using this stuff. I've never used castor oil straight. This is the first one of these, a Castor 927. I decided to try that because they say castor oil lubricates better as it gets hotter. So for chainsaw milling, I figured sounds good. So that's this experiment, and